be outside of borders. And with that, it is time for our next run here. We have Mobile Suit Gundam, the One-Year War.
正義の怒りをぶつける RTA 機動戦士ガンダム1年戦争のお時間です。はい、本作はですね、2005年発売の1年戦争体感型のアクションゲームとなっています。バンダイとナムコが共同開発してこの本作がきっかけで経営統合したっていう話もあるんですが、この話より2005年の、クソゲーオブザイヤーにノミネートされたということの方が知名度は高いんじゃないでしょうかね。今回 RTA 走らせてもらうということで、本作がクソゲーではないということも、知っていただけるよう頑張りたいとは思います。今回奏者と解説の一人マブ戦術をさせていただきます。久穂です。よろしくお願いします。はい、タイマースタートはですね、このストーリーモードの、難易度選択の難易度ノーマル。
Alright, it looks like we're going to be running the category story mode. It looks like it's done on normal, I guess. I know nothing about this game. We have a commentator who hopefully might show up. But yeah, in the meantime, chat, if you know anything about Mobile Suit Gundam or just Gundam in general, please help me out here. I don't know much about them other than they're like giant mech suits or something like that. They seem really cool. I just don't know a lot about them. I do see in chat saying that the runner has dressed for the part. It seems like a lot of the runners have been doing that, which is super cool.
人型のやつはモビルスーツ、人型じゃないでかいやつはモビルアーマーというのを知っていれば、なんとかなると思います。はい、では、今から始めさせていただきます。3カウントで始めます。はい、3、2、1、スタートです。はい、ミッション1、ガンダム大地に立つですね、コロニーに侵入したザックを倒します。本作のテクニックとしてですね、動作の硬直をジャンプで消すというものがあります。実際どういうものかっていうのは見てもらった方が分かると思います。
Giant mechs in space combat, you know, that's a pretty cool combo. I must say I'm a fan of that.
近づいて切ってジャンプ、はい、終わりです。はい、次はデニムのジャンプするので対空サーベルで落とします。タックルしてくるので回避で2段切ってバルカンで終わりです。本作ですね、原作再現という、メモリアルアクションというものが発生して、ムービーが流れるんですけども、それを発生させてしまうと、飛ばせなくてロスになるんですね。はい、これでミッション1クリアです。はい、ミッションに、敵の補給艦を叩け、補給中の敵艦を強襲しに行きます。はい、ここから、ビームライフルが使用可能になります。でまず移動ですね。ダッシュ、ジャンプ、ダッシュで移動していきます。気づいてないので、まず2発は確実に当たります。で動きを見て、1発バルカン、1発で撃破。で今ダウンさせて。
Okay, so it looks like we're going around and fighting a bunch of other Gundams, mechs, something like that. Oh, I like the lightsaber thingy. That's really cool. That's a very cool weapon.
さあ次はですね、エースパイロットの赤い彗星。
Oh, I think we're in space now. This looks like the moon. I think I saw space or Earth or a planet in the distance there.
3段格闘をタックル回避で2段で、はい、終わりです。はい、次はクレーター近くに移動して、はい、ガデムの旧作ですね。着地に3段タックルしてくるので2段当ててビームライフルで終わりです。ここもですね、サーベルで倒してしまうとメモリアルが発生するのでロスになります。はい、ミッション2クリアです。
And I think that sounded like maybe the second level was done. Yep, mission 2 was done. We're now re-entering Earth. I appreciate there being some English text here. That is helpful. And I see in chat, maybe based off of the first Gundam series, and that the anime portraits, the art style looks old enough to maybe. Who knows? That is more than I know about this, so thank you. That's helpful. Okay, it's based off of the Mobile Suit Gundam, the original show. Okay, very interesting. Good to know. Thank you, chat.
今回はいい感じですね。
It appears that we're maneuvering about in space using thrusters, which makes sense. I don't know about you all, but in my experience, when I've had to control something using thrusters, it's always seemed very difficult to do. So I am impressed with how quickly and easily the runner seems to be able to maneuver about using these thrusters. Like that to me is very cool and very impressive.
はい、撃破したのでホワイトベースに帰りましょう。とりあえずホワイトベースの白いところにぶつかりに行けば終わりです。ここはですね、左上のタイマーが4分が超えた状態でホワイトベースに帰還していないとメモリアル発生で大気圏突入です。はい、ミッション3クリアです。はい、ミッション4ガルマ出撃数、左舷機銃を使って敵を迎撃します。ガンダムでは珍しいですね、左舷機銃を使って。でここはですね、基本的には覚えゲーなんで、敵の出現位置と、弾切れにならないように気をつけながら戦いましょう。
Oh, we changed perspective.
このミッションに関する喋ること
We're
が
in
ない
first person.
操作説明の
I'm
方でも
unsure if we're are we inside the mech.
本作ですね、
I'm not sure, but
いわゆる FPS
very interesting. We've got different perspectives in this game, third person and first.
R1、R2 で武器を使います。L21 でダッシュ、L2 でジャンプ、右スティックで視点操作、左スティックで移動ですね。本作の評価が悪くなってた理由の一つとしてこの操作が当時2005年代っていうのは十字キーと丸×三角四角がまだ主流だった時代ですよね。なのでこの操作になれないっていうのでわりかし不評を食らってたっていうのも話としてはあります。今だったら多分そんなに違和感のない操作でやりやすいとは思います。あとですね、この当時ぐらいの、ガンダムの他の作品芸でいうと、ガンダム VS ゼータガンダムや、連合 VS ザフトがちょうどこの年ぐらいのガンダム VS ゼータガンダムは2004年でしたねに発売だったんでそれもあったんでしょうね多分。であとですね、本作メインで使うガンダムの武装について
Again, Chad is being very helpful here, saying these are the white bases guns. That makes sense. I do see what looks like something white there as he's panned the camera down.
残念ながらジャベリンとガンダムハンマーはありません。でですね、
I'm really curious to know if this is like an auto scroller, if this is on rails, sort of how this works. I don't know. I'd be very curious. This feels like it's sort of on rails.
1段階目が100、
Or at least this section feels very much like it's on rails.
3段階目が215とかといった感じで上昇していきます。でですね、
Targets all over the place. There's stuff up in the air, stuff on the ground below us. Lots of different enemies we got to deal with here.
威力自体は少ないんですけども、弱いんですけども、入力すると、また別の標準が出てきて、その枠内にいる、敵を自動で攻撃してくれる。でミサイルやバズーカも迎撃してくれるっていう結構便利な使い勝手のいい武器になってます。でですね、ビームサーベル、これはですね R2 ボタンで使用することができます。で一応威力が1段階目が120、2段階目180、3段階目が244といった感じで威力が上昇していきます。ここでちょっと一つメモリアルアクションを起こしましょうか。ここはですね、攻撃を10秒ぐらいしないとこんな感じでブライトさんに怒られます。これがRTA 的に起こしても起こさんでも別にいいですね。特にタイムに影響はないんで。でですね、また格闘の話になるんですけども、格闘はですね、ニュートラル状態だと3段格闘、ダッシュした状態で入力すると月が出ますね。で敵が横か後ろにいる状態だと回転切りになります。このゲームのしようとして、格闘の1段2段これには食らっても敵がダウンしないんですね。なので、1、2当ててジャンプキャンセルでまた1、2を当てるっていうループが成立します。 じゃあこれ使ったらもうこのゲームのモビルスーツ戦は完璧やんと思うじゃないですか。このゲーム基本的にガンダム側の格闘不利なんですね。なんでかっていうと、格闘3段目振るのが遅すぎて、その間に相手の格闘入るんですね。なんで1、2で間で相手の格闘をカウンターで食らうっていうことが多発するんで、あんまり有利ではないです。ここムービーですね。はい、ムービーが終わってミッション4が終わりです。
And I think that might be mission 3 done?
次がミッション5、飛べガンダムです。
Oh no, that was mission 4 already. Okay.
部隊と地上部隊を撃破していきます。
Ooh, this one says fly Gundam, which makes me think we're going to be doing a lot of flying again.
はい、開幕出撃ムービーが飛ばして練習します。でこのマテラトップを倒していきます。
4 missions in 9 minutes is quite impressive. That feels pretty fast, especially given how long that last mission was.
発生条件が解放してしまいました。でここはですね、別に本当はマテラトップ特に倒す必要はないんですね。というのも、ホワイトベースが一定ラインに到達しないと次に進まないっていう風になっているので。
I do have a question for you. So I don't know Gundam very well, but I do know Titanfall. Would you consider Titanfall to be a Gundam game? Feels like they're similar in idea. Large mech creatures. Let me know in chat. What do you think of that idea?
はい、全部です。さてここから少し間違があるので、ジャンプキャンセルについてのちょっとお話をさせています。
Oh, the light sword is off.
角度からダッシュするってなると、ちょっと
Alright, so we got one person in agreement that Titanfall and Gundam are not that far off from each other. Okay.
でこれでこういう感じで1、2でいきなり後ろに下がるみたいな機動力がよく使えます。ダッシュもですね同じように、右下のゲージを見てもらうと分かるんですけど、そのままするとちょっと回復遅いんですね。一瞬固まるみたいな感じのなんですけど、ジャンプキャンセル使うとダッシュジャンプするとすぐ回復するんですよ。でこれのおかげでだいぶこのゲームこれを覚えさえすればだいぶ機動力が上がって動きやすくなりますね。ただこれの仕様として赤と緑で分かれてるじゃないですか。でこれ入力してると回復しないんですね。
I continue to be impressed by the mobility and agility of our character here. Moves so fast and so easily. And with that, I have some good news for you all, everyone. We have a commentator here who'll be joining us in just a moment. So you'll have someone who's able to talk knowledgeably about this game instead of my questions. But thank you all. You've been a very helpful chat. We'll have a commentator up in just a moment.
タックルさせて2段ジャンプまたゲームが出ましたね。
All right, everyone, welcome our commentator here, Magus. Magus, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about this game.
Sure thing. Also, hi everyone. Had to rush for this one. Anyway, this is Magus 1, and this is one of the PS2 games for the Gundam franchise. It is essentially based off the 1 Year War, or essentially the sorry, blanking here. The first Gundam anime franchise, which is released, I believe, in 1979. So essentially, you're looking at the RX, original Gundam alongside the. Sorry, y'all. Just had to catch my breath. Essentially, you're looking at the original Gundam stuff for those fans out there, alongside Star, a lot of the old tropes. And what you see so far is the runner moving and taking advantage of the tools of the trade for these types of runs, where you have your guns, your Valkyries, your health. If you look at the bottom right corner, you can see everything on that one. And you see them jumping with the little thing there, going as far as they can to try to maintain boosting because it's faster to boost jump than it is to walk. You also have your beam saber, your rifle, and the Valkyries. Well, not Valkyrie guns, the little things on the top that fire the bullets. They apparently do actually shoot down missiles. Although the button, checking game facts here, the button that it's bound to is L3, so you really can't see them master it as much. Considering this is a PS2 game, for those of you that have a PlayStation controller near you, you can pick it up and see exactly what buttons are on that one. Apparently, a lot of the stuff is done via the shoulder button, with jump being on the actual face buttons. Now, the interesting thing about these styles of runs is you're going to be seeing a lot of combinations of inputs put together to chain together a lot of movement. The run does have some tech to it, as far as making sure to aim, making sure to fire, trying to delay your times on your shots so that way you can get as much damage in as possible, alongside using auto aiming to help with aligning stuff like that one. Also with the beam saber, you have a 3-hit combo, with the right stick being for the camera angle. So you try to actually use that to help make sure you are facing the right direction. And by facing the right direction, I mean being able to turn fast, use that to help guide where hitboxes are, and a lot of other little things. For story mode, it is done on normal. And although, according to SRC, they only have it as one category difficulty, so I don't know if anybody has submitted it for hard mode or not, but you'll tend to see them jumping towards the enemies and also trying to make sure that they get to as close as you can to have the damage hit while staying far enough away so that you can essentially hit the so you can maneuver back from there. As you can see, aiming on that one, making sure that you can see things with that one, hitting them at a distance, and just before they release the on the last hit that they will hit, they immediately are breaking the auto lock and immediately continuing on, so that way they can keep moving as fast as possible. Making a save here. I don't know if that is on purpose or not, as generally for these type of games you do not want to make saves unless it is very fast on that one, since it does take time for the game to actually save a file. And that also answers my other question that I had about whether or not they are actually using a memory card or not, since sometimes the fact is that if you do not have a memory card plugged in, it will sometimes default to no automatically, meaning you do not have to actually change your inputs or hit maneuver over to the no button. I would have to look up which of the particular missions this is. If anybody's been keeping count in chat, please do let me know so I can keep an eye on, so I can, give more exact details. Sorry, the marathon being this far ahead means having to rush through things. So hopefully you all are enjoying this at minimum. Anyway, we at present are playing as one of the other characters. I forget which one of them. But like I said, this is more taking place during the 1-year war. The war between the Earth Federation and the Zeon Federation. Sorry, Principality of Zeon. So for those that are familiar with Amuro, Char, the whole trope about how a villain having a mask on that one, using something that's red, you see this from there. And right now they're loading up on that one, though one of the longer loads. See them firing as close as they can and slowly moving around to make sure that they aim as fast as possible on that one, using their long-range guns.
撃破していくと、出現順
And
が
feeling the missiles coming in, so they'll be using the
する位置を覚えて撃破していく
actual Vulcans to shoot them down.
マシンガンが2
Like I
発
said before,
ランチャーが1
control scheme-wise, that being bound to L3 means that it is a little bit awkward to hit the button to use that.
機動力が遅い代わりに、弾を食らっ
So
て
in this
ダウン
instance,
しない
because they're all coming towards
があります
the
機動力が遅い影響なのか
actual mech, that means you can sometimes just stay where you are and just fire at enemies at a distance. Opting to go with more distance than using the melee because of needing to basically not move and continuing where the enemies are.
ミサイルランチャーを撃ってマシンガンでマシン
Personally, you'll also see them try to combine as much damage as possible to be able to get rid of enemies as fast as possible.
で発
For those that know these styles of games, again, the more, I won't say typical, but just actually sticking around, making sure you get rid of all the enemies, tanking damage,
であれは
them actually using some of the guard options to help prevent damage.
本来ですね
They're in the gun tank, which is
やると
one of the other mobile suits that was on White Base.
演出があるんですけど
Shoutouts to the old internet meme about jumping onto White Base. Because yes, I do remember those things. Getting through that one. Moving over to not save. Because of course saving takes time.
はい、次はですね、ミッション
Immediately
9
skipping through the menus and options for changing things.
まず開幕はですね、正面のやつに
So back to using the RX-79 Gundam.
ルックに行き
Picking their shots. If you see them jump, that is more to make sure that they have enough height to be able to use the
中強最
attack
強の
at range to make sure it can guarantee hit.
でですね
You can also see them firing the Falcons to deal a bit more damage. For those that have never seen a run of this style or a mech game speedrun, they can vary depending on what you have to do, but generally think of this as a combination of vehicle-based game, third-person shooter, and a lot more different types of movement on that one. So you have to actually be able to prepare and think about your movement, where the shots are going to be, your aiming, as well as thinking ahead of where you need to shoot from, resetting aim if using auto targeting. And sometimes you'll also see them move slightly during that to allow for the ability to actually hit the enemies without having the slight differences in auto targeting, although I'm not sure if they're doing auto targeting or not.
最短で近づけます
Sadly, this is one of those games that was Japanese only. And even though I do speedrun games in the genre, it's one of the ones that I have sadly not picked up to try and play.
出撃破して株放題
If
で本体
you got anything you want to say, feel free.
撃破しましたいいですね
Oh, you're doing a fantastic job explaining this. Thank you so much, Magus, for joining here. I will say, though, if you're watching this and you're going, hey, I would love to help be up here commentating, explaining a game, you can check out the schedule by typing !schedule in chat. That will show you the schedule for the event in English. And you can type !form in the chat to apply to come help commentate any of the games that are upcoming. If you've played them casually, if you speedrun them, maybe you haven't played that exact game, but you know something in the series, that also works too.
Or, like me, has examples of the similar genre for that one, as Macross Runner here for those fellow mech fans.
Yeah, exactly like that. As long as you have knowledge of the game in some way, fill out the form and come help us out with commentary, because we would love to have you.
And to answer the question in chat about knowing the mission goals, a lot of them were a bit more straightforward, although because of it being an older game, shoutouts to GameFAQs for having at least this is what the goals are that people have found on that one.
ランバラルはフィールド外に逃げてしまうんですね それを防ぐために
constantly moving, keeping up their momentum on that one, using the 3-hit combo on that one. And you'll notice that just as the last hit went, they immediately started moving towards the next enemy.
今回いいですね。はい、撃破します。
As it is a lot faster to try to use the last little bit of a hitbox to be able to finish off an enemy and continue to move than to try to stand there and let the full hitbox go. For those fighting game fans out there, think of it like using the sour spot or the last possible,
今回早かったですね。いい動
I
き
won't say frame, but the last possible, as close as possible distance-wise so that the hitbox overlaps so that you get the hit while being able to maneuver out of it.
はい、次はですね、ミッション
Which is actually a bit,
指導ホワイトベース。
it's not,
ホワイトベ
it
ー
is
ス
difficult
戦闘の中で
because you're having to get the timing right, but it is not as difficult that it seems to be able to pick up the skill
珍
set.
しいホワイトベースで拳銃を使っての戦いになります。
Right now they're inside white base, which is done in a more first-person
大体まあこの
perspective.
一らへんぐらいで
Actually, either playing as Bright or Armoro,
この一らへん
that
ぐらい
one,
で
so
敵色と
transitioning into a first-person, first-person side effect. These parts are usually kind of interesting to see how players handle them, the speed at which they will fire, and where the actual enemies will spawn from. As it's technically not an auto-scroller like you would think. Think of it more of like some of the old light gun arcade games, to where you will prepare your shots ahead of time, fire just before they pop on screen, so that when they do pop on screen, the bullets are already just about to hit them.
で2人
For those shmup and other game fans, it's similar to going in as close as possible to have less actual shots on screen, not only to be able to save on
素早く倒す
animation in case of lag, but also to be able to deal more damage efficiently. Because sometimes you are restricted to
手動でリロード
number of projectiles on screen, so
弾が少なくなってき
if there are less projectiles on screen, the game will let you fire faster.
はい、また移動です。はい、1人
Now, it's been years before since I have seen the original Gundam, but I am still a fan of it. Shoutouts to one of the OG mecha franchises.
覚えて撃破
Well before the advent of a lot more of the modern ones. This is why I still love it.
一応この
Also,
奥にいるセイラとセイラさん
Gundam
と
did pioneer a lot of the things within
出
it.
てくるんですけども
Again,
これは2人に撃って
looking at the uniform, yep, they're playing as
ミ
Bright
ッション失敗になったりとか
Most
誤射は
likely
する特にないので
because of the color of the uniform.
気にせず撃ちましょう
Bright Noah being the captain of the white base.
実はジオン兵のモデ
But
ル
if you're
が
watching this, you probably know at least something about Gundam anyway, as most people do, even if they have
だけなので
never seen any of the shows. It's just that iconic in the
作り込むというか
zeitgeist of pop culture.
はいこれで終わりですねはい、ミッション11、クリアですはい、次はですね、ミッション12、激闘は憎しみ深く。
I will admit that there were a lot of Gundam games for the PS2 that did not actually reach the US or outside of Japan, either US, Europe,
開幕ムービーがあるのでそれを飛ば
South America. Just take your pick on that one. So they're back to piloting the
マゼラトップ
RX-79 Gundam, choosing to use the cover to help
あ逃げられた
maintain not taking damage.
マゼラトップがなかなか狙いづらい低いんですねこれでザックが出てきたんでザックも倒しますあ逃げられたあとはマゼラアタックが出てあったらはい終わりですねここはですね、ちょっと短縮技として、ザクが出現する前にサムソントレーラーとマゼラトップを撃破すると、ザクを倒さずにムービーを流せるっていうテクニックが、ちょっとした小技があるんですけど、まあ時間が10秒ぐらいしかないのでできたらいいなぐらいには思っています。さあ背後を取られて絶対絶命の窮地に重傷を負っていたはずの竜がコアファイターで特攻し窮地を脱するというムービーです。はい、ミッション12クリアです。
And again, finishing up that mission pretty quickly.
はい、次がミッション13。
These types of games, it's all about knowledge, being able to actually control things quite well. And I hate to say it, but if you ever see a hand cam of someone that is actually speedrunning these types of games, you would be surprised about how much movement they are actually doing and how precise they are trying to be.
はい、撃破です。こんな感じでグフをしていきます。
As you want to be able to just barely clip things on that one as soon as possible to continue the
狙い
damage.
づらくて全然弾が当たらないので、そこはまあ動きを見ながら戦っていきましょう。でまあ、撃破していく間なので敵のパイロットランクっていうものをちょっと説明させていただきます。この HP の下
Again,
にある
moving forward, using that 3-hit combo because it deals enough damage on that one.
ルーキーと
Generally, you'll see range over close
難易
range
度ハードのみでニュータイプという
due to the amount of damage that is dealt. However, you also see them not try to switch between weapons. I don't know if that is because the game takes the time to swap between things, or if it is able to be handled with just the normal amount of damage. I will admit, though, that usually you do want to try to do as much damage as possible. So if a game will let you actually mash two different types of attacks simultaneously, you will see a runner do that. Meaning, for example, if the Falcons, the machine guns on that one, can be hit at the same time as like the beam rifle and you are within range, so that both of those things will reach the enemy and deal damage, you will see that. As usually, in order for things to be able to be used to destroy certain objects, in this case the Falcons are used for getting rid of missiles, that still means it has a hitbox, which means it still is able to be used to deal damage for the most part.
はい、撃破しました。これで破棄かな。はい、これで
And again,
はい、ミッション13ク
you're
リア
trying
で
to
す。
combination of like a third-person shooter and a more vehicle-based
はい、次は
combat
ミッション14
speedrun. Those of you that ever played a game like Twisted Metal or
ガイアオルテガ
things like
黒い3連
Twisted Metal, Ace Combat, take your pick. Like you see just a hybrid of a lot of different maneuvers
最初はまず
in speedruns of these things.
そしてそんな機体が3機でバズーカを持っているので着弾しないように気をつけながら戦いま
And
しょう。
again, making sure to get as close as possible, take out the enemies that they need to be taken out, preparing ahead of time, firing shots to either lead them to certain locations
進行先を見て
or to cause them to actually try to move in certain ways. It may not look like it's possible to manipulate where enemies go, but it is actually very possible depending on positioning purposes.
はい、撃破しました。で、次はムービーが入ります。ジェットストリームアタックに対して
Again, using jumping on that one versus normal walking, as you can tell a difference. However, I am not sure if or if not this game is the type of game where you use an entire boost to be able to jump and dash forward, or if it can be mashed for a little bit. That you can see them actually doing that to some degree. So that answers my question. As sometimes you do want to actually just mash slightly to sometimes get forward speed instead of all the way, depending on the total amount and recharge time. Think of it like something like for those Zelda fans out there, when you have Epona or the boosts, with the carrots, or racing game fans out there. If you can do a small boost enough that you can actually regain those faster than it would be to use them all in one shot, then you will see runners actually swap between those ideas.
耐久ミッションになっています。さてここで私が最初にすることは何かというと
And avoiding the missiles on that one, you do sometimes see runners just move left and right to be able to just avoid missiles and other incoming projectiles as well as the fact of it depends on the aim, if or if not it won't be a direct shot, or if it just deals with this is close enough, so we'll give it a % chance. If it's like that, you sometimes will see runners move things here and there when firing, just to be able to get that extra little bit of lineup to compensate for the game automatically trying to aim.
ビッグトレイが HP の黄色になってもらうのを待ちましょう。
Avoiding moving, you'll see them jumping to actually be able to not only gain height but also be just the tiniest bit closer to the enemy to be able to fire.
難易度ハードはですね、まあその通り敵の HP が増加、敵のパイロットの上昇。
Instead of moving forward,
そして本作の面白い部分である
so that way they get in range enough so that they can hit them
ところがあります。
and also be able to jump backward when needed.
ここのミッションではドムが出てくるんですけども、難易度ハードになると、
Again, I just know the genre and know exactly what to look for.
0083に出てくるスターダストメモリーです。
For those wondering, current world record according to SRC is around a 121 and change. And that was as of 14 days ago.
まあこういったドムトローペン自体は、初登場がスターダストメモリーなので、この時期におるのは本来ならおかしいですね。
If we see anything below a 121, then this run will be world record, which means we'll be even further ahead. Sorry, couldn't help it there on that one. But overall, again, just like good movement, jumping forward when need to, pulling backwards, trying to just maintain that aim perfectly on that one firing. And as you can see there, doing as much damage as needed before immediately actually swapping to the next target. As it's all about just maintaining your lock on, moving, dodging, and just trying to get as much damage in as possible. I will say these types of games and speedruns are actually very fun to not only play, but do. They usually have like that kind of like you're almost never going to play perfectly all the time, but you can also tell skill level wise someone that has actually practiced because they're able to actually anticipate where they need to move and how they need to move.
もうそろそろ到着ですね。起動するのがめんどくさいんで。
Trying to make sure on that one. Having a bit of trouble getting like that perfect shot lineup, but eventually still getting it. Sorry if I'm not talking about story, it's trying to remember OG Gundam's timeline. And the UC or Universal Sensory is the Gundam timeline that has the most actual shows in it.
はい、ミッション15クリアです。
Skipping that. Again, hopefully you all are enjoying what you're seeing so far.
ベルファスト基地を襲撃するモビルスーツを迎撃します。はい、最初に出てくるのはゴックが出てきます。
Dodging is
ゴックはですね、
sometimes you will see actual movement moving forward or backwards. Sometimes moving when you can with boost and without, and you'll see some partial things just to not only be able to get closer to enemies, but also to back up and launch an attack and then immediately back up or dodge to the left or right to help position towards the next enemy. Doesn't matter how close you are, just as long as you get the enemy taken down.
八島重工のロゴがついてます。他にもですね、スター
I
ト
will say these runs are, I won't say just an art form, but more of a, you don't see it as much nowadays.
さあ、ゴックを4機撃破したら、本作最強機体と言える
So you just see what you can do on that one. I'm looking closely myself on that one to follow along. Getting within range using the beam saber.
格闘を振ったら2発当ててビームライフルを当てて撃破していきます。
Using auto lock on to maintain where you need to go. Sorry if I could only explain gameplay on that one.
そんなん気にせずすごい高機動で動き回りま
Good
す。
job there, getting rid of most of it.
そんな機体が、3機撃破する必要がある中で実質的な時間制限的なものもあり、 さっきの回は
dodging the missiles on that one, using
ガンダ
the
ムの襲撃を見せホワイトベースの
on
襲撃
that
を
one.
見せもせなかっ
As
た
you can see down at the bottom on the right hand side, the weapons with the bar that's going down here and there, that is their boost, which is used for not only jumping but for the moving forward or to the side quickly.
なので到着前にズゴックを3機、こんな感じですね。すると、増援が来ずにミッションクリアできます。はい、ミッション16クリアです。
Magus, I have a question for you that you might be able to answer. At the beginning of the run, Chat and I were trying to figure out if they're in space, if they're on Earth, are they going back and forth? Do you have a sense of what's happening? Are they doing space travel here, or are they all just on the same planet the whole time?
Oh! Well, the very first level takes place on Side 7, which is a colony surrounding Earth on that one, which is why you have the one which takes place between the Xeon Principality, which is Side 3, which was surrounding the moon, and essentially you have the Earth Federation, which of course says, takes place on Earth, while also at the same time being in charge of a lot of the floating in space colonies. So in this instance, you are seeing the switching between Earth and then, between the colonies where some of the battles took place. Within that, after the first mission, you're basically having Armoro get into the actual Gundam itself, starting it up, waking it up, taking out the enemies that are attacking his own colony, and then blasting out alongside the white base into space. So most of this is taking place on Earth. And if you're wondering about how much of a difference story-wise that has affected things, long conflict takes over. The whole game as a whole takes place over a single year with multiple different battlefronts and a lot of things that you do or do not see. Shoutouts to a lot of the spin-offs and a lot of them actually being very good and very interesting watches as far as not only storytelling goes, but perspectives on things. Also, shoutouts to Armoro being the first of the characters as far as tropes go to be one of the very first actual anime protagonists to have the emotions helping to pilot a mecha when it used to be a lot more of magic and other stuff like that. Also, shoutouts to those that know what a Zaku is, as it's one of the most famous actual mobile suits out there. Also, for those that aren't sure, Armoro is actually canonically a new type, or someone that generally has a lot of psychic powers that helps them out. Same thing with Char Aznable. Or, God, I forget Char's actual true name, as he is the last of the Zabi line who was in charge of the actual Xeon Federation. The Principality of Xeon before his family was brutally murdered. That took me a bit to remember all of that.
でですね、このガンペリーがミサイル発射したときに、上に乗ることができて、一応ガンペリーは。で、その時は、下を見ると、ちゃんと。
To answer the question, chat, I do not believe they showed the opening salvo to the war, which was the Principality of Xeon dropping a space colony on Earth. Because, yeah, that's one of the things that started the war after a lot of major things, because the Principality of Xeon wanted independence for their actual colonies rather than being ruled by Earth. Which brings up a whole question of whether or not, if you are on a planet that has colonies that are surrounding it or hovering, who should be in charge leading it government-wise? The colonies who have the ability to, if they actually get annoyed, drop stuff on the planet, or the planet who is technically not present, but at the same point are constantly technically in threat range. Good philosophical question, though.
As
you can see here, this is a time limit style mission. I'm not sure if it is a survival time or if it is get this done within time. as that can matter for a lot of different things. If it's to survive till X point, you'll just see runners sometimes just take enough time to keep themselves alive and just sometimes actually just go for a score count just because they can, especially if they can skip the ending result screens as fast as possible. If it's a complete mission in X time, you'll see them normally just do a lot more execution based and go specifically for exactly what they need to get rid of, which is something you may think you're doing that already, but sometimes you don't see that happen as much because because sometimes it is a lot more efficient to go for specific targets at certain locations versus going straight for those that are in front of you. That whole idea of if you know you're going to have to take out more enemies or there's going to be reinforcements, sometimes it's better to just spawn all the reinforcements and take them out all at once rather than going for specific objectives and taking them out one at a time. If you can set up more things to take out more objectives at once, it is sometimes worth it to do better movement than to just take out what's in front of you because of line of actual movement. Again, seeing dodging left and right, firing at a distance. That one, seeing as soon as they can aim at and fire a weapon shot to be able to take out the aerial enemies, you see them doing that. So shout outs to the graphics and being able to see some of the clipping within that one. This is because the ship is that big, you can sometimes not even need to auto target to be able to deal damage as long as it actually will let you hit them without needing to be locked on. It is sometimes worth it on larger targets to just manually fire without even locking on, as it is sometimes a bit more accurate. Avoiding the missiles, boosting in close, anything. I believe if they have to get any closer, they will probably switch. Yep. Because not only does it save some of the shots on the beam rifle, which you can see on the HUD on the right-hand side, with the radar on the left, that it is a lot faster to deal what you can, but deal as much damage as you can, even if it's not as much damage as you would like, because of whichever is stronger. Sometimes it is not worth boosting forward, even if you could get rid of an enemy faster, unless it is close enough to more enemies that you can take out more of them, versus the mobility to be able to immediately dodge or turn to the next available enemy. As I can hear on that one, talking about snipers on that one, so I can assume that they're trying to actually hit stuff at a distance. Again, boosting forward using the Vulcans. And because of the way the control scheme is set up, it is a lot harder for them to be able to overlap both the Vulcans and the actual beam rifle, even though there is a difference in range. If you're in a certain amount of range to be able to do both things at the same time, you can do that. However, control scheme wise, they have that the default control scheme, and I do not know if you could change control scheme on that one, is tied to L3, so center stick press on that one, although it is supposed to be able to be held in and be able to have continuous fire. The drawback is that it's really hard to actually hold that in while trying to move, while trying to do other multiple inputs at the same time. That is when you can actually button remap some of those actual useful inputs to a button that lets you do things more. You can also see the amount of ammo that is remaining for the Falcon at the top of the right-hand side of the lower half of the screen. That is how much is left for that one. The lower option being the beam rifle, followed by health, And on the other side, you see the boost and jump actual thing. You see them normally using all of it when they can. So it does make me wonder whether or not you can spam that rather than using the whole thing. And if worth not, it would be faster, but that's one thing you do also have to consider when moving, is when and how to use your boost gauge. As you can't just hold it in and always get things. And considering how slow your walking speed is, you do want to actually be able to move as fast as possible while at the same point not having to walk, because walking is slow. And again, see them jumping up to be able to avoid some of the terrain while also being able to fire at a bit of a distance. Again, you just saw them use the Falcons to help take down the enemy there alongside the Beam Saber. Although I do not think this game has the Gundam Hammer, which is the actual Morning Star style weapon that was used and shown in the original show. And I think also Z Gundam as well, which was part of its sequel, which I believe they took out when they redid the show, I think on Netflix. So I might add the hammer was actually a pretty decent weapon just because of blunt damage on that one. Again, doing well, using the Falcons when they can. Trying to not only take damage from Char, but also trying to avoid missiles while keeping them in sight to be able to actually take out the... If you just noticed the Gundam falling over, that is actually a mechanic that is sometimes seen in mech games and sometimes not. All depends on how the developers chose to handle things. The same thing is true with momentum, as sometimes you'll see the ability to actually take advantage of speed to be able to slide a bit more versus just having the standard walking forward or backwards or use of boost, so that you can actually use a little bit of extra momentum to help with moving away or taking turns a lot easier. You'll also see use of the camera to be able to help with that.
Mission 19クリアです。
Putting on cutscenes, swapping out, completely cutting through that one.
次は宇宙に上がってミッション20、ザンジバル強襲です。追撃か。ザンジバル追撃です。モビルアーマーを追撃します。16ミッションぶりの宇宙政治ですね。
Chat.
特番のビグロです。
Yeah, we have another space stage on that one.
ビグロはまあグラブロみたいに動き
So making sure to target with that one, following along, avoiding the missiles, and trying to maintain lock on. Now, I will point out that trying to do space stuff in an actual mobile suit or mech that does not have the transformation abilities. That was one of the positive things about Macross. It is actually a bit awkward because the environment, it is like maneuvering in a pure 3D weightless atmosphere, which can get you a bit disoriented when you're not used to it, but it is also one of those things that is easily learnable to just be like, and just think about like, okay, where am I in the surrounding space on that one? So you have to think about it as the center point is you, and everything else within there is basically surrounding things in a 360-degree radius. At least you don't have to deal with a turnaround button that usually will be affected based on angle direction you are facing. Again, targeting things using the this is the gun tank or turret range, most likely just the turret. Again, firing to get rid of things as fast as possible, avoiding the missiles. And avoiding that one, aiming as close as they can to deal enough damage. Aiming just slightly off and looking at which is closer to be able to hit as soon as they're within range, and picking out the ones that are going to be the most annoying to get rid of.
本当に末期の末期に作られて、数機作った時点で終戦者。
Again, these type of games really are a treat to watch, as it is all about actually just making sure you can line stuff up perfectly and take out things,
4つを撃破して、
while maintaining health
でまた現れる。
and making sure stuff does not go
これどんどん
even worse. And by that I mean it's all about the combat. You may know where things spawn, you may know other stuff like that, and the whole idea is to take things out as fast as possible so that enemies don't start going around and making things a lot harder. Which in a speedrun sense means adapting a lot more.
こっちから敵の攻撃を妨害する。
Testing, taking out all the missiles that are being fired,
しかないので、
managing to get that just in time.
とかそういうのは特に気にせず。
In this instance, you sometimes want to wait till the very last minute, so that way you do not have to actually stop firing at the enemy. Because if they are taken out before you get hit, depending on the stage, that can sometimes end the stage before the missile hitting you. Which,
このセリフが出てきた
for
ら、
those RPG players out there, well, action RPG players out there, it doesn't matter what's on the screen. If a battle will end just as
ザンジバルが突っ込んでいきます。
if a battle will end on the last hit of an enemy, then it doesn't matter what is remaining on screen for the most part, because it will immediately go to the mission clear screen.
じゃあ今度左右行くところ
Mind you, that's not always the case, but ideally and generally you normally do see that. Although in rare instances you will still also see lingering hitboxes from that kind of stuff. But again,
はい、これでミッション20クリアです。
oh, as Chad is putting out, yes, the streamer is dressed in an Armoro costume. I won't say costume on that one, but at least wearing the jacket to that one.
ミッション21、強行突破作戦、ドレイン率いるキャメル艦隊との戦闘です。
Although I am not aware of if or not they are playing the game on PS2 or PS3 backwards compatibility Gen 1 PS3 or not, as that sometimes can matter.
7機
But at the same point, aiming, getting it close, hitting a beam sword.
奥にいる無才なんですけど、
Again,
モビルスーツを
these
4機
space missions actually can be very interesting to play and to speedrun,
まあ
since you're having to be more cognizant of
まあ別に悪く
more
はない
like
ですけど、
camera angles and how they can actually adjust where and how you are moving.
撃破して、
This is one of those types of things where good camera control can matter a lot, because not only is it affecting where you're looking, but also your actual orientation. So think of it like a good way to actually practice getting good at camera adjustments, which is something you do have to consider,
宇宙ステージはですね、L1 のダッシュ
especially when they give you a free-flowing camera. If they don't, at the same point, you still then have to adjust where you are manually looking with your controls, with the character movement. But usually when they give you an actual free-looking camera, think of it sort of as like tank controls, but a more advanced style of tank control.
できます。
Since camera controls, which sometimes go overlooked, can actually be used to adjust and compensate for a lot of things positioning-wise.
砲台3つになっているのと、ミッションに出てきた、シャア専用無才である
If you're facing a certain direction, you can adjust that so that way you don't move, your character itself does not move,
ミッション21
but the way in which you're facing moves. So if you hold your hand up
はい次が
and you're looking straight at it, then move it left or right, you can start to see like how,
部隊を撃破します。
although it is standing still, if you can imagine like the camera being your hand to some degree, you can see just like how it can start rotating things without you moving at all. And in which case that does affect which way you are moving when you combine that with actually moving as well. Again, going in close, trying to keep lock on that one. This instance, getting in as close as possible while making sure to deal enough damage. Again, trying to make sure that it can maintain the hitbox, and it's like I said, you could see exactly how when swinging the sword and moving the camera, it does affect where the actual sword is actually being targeted. So you don't have to be as precise as far as moving the character, but it does actually give you a lot more interesting movement options to be able to control your actual hitboxes. Like that one, getting some hits in to get it as fast as possible, firing at range. And you can see that our runner here avoiding the attacks as much as possible while trying to maintain actual movement. And I can tell you, as a fellow mecha game enthusiast and runner, this stuff is not easy. Let me rephrase that. It is in the sense of the skill ceiling is high, but to learn the ability to do it itself is easy to pick up. But the ability to do that at a high level so that you can keep things hit and damaged with the ability to react immediately to your next target is a bit of a challenge, especially when you're adding in boosting, moving forward and backwards, and having to swap between weapons. And you can see also firing the beam rifle, using the Vulcans when they can. Really hate the fact that the developers decided to map that to the L3 button, as honestly, if it was any other button, you would probably see our runner combine those two, either with swinging the sword or firing the beam rifle whenever they would be in range for the extra bit of damage. And now we're back on Earth. Jumping forward, again, approaching the enemy as fast as possible, aligning up not only with movement but also camera to help with controlling your actual positioning. As these types of games, sometimes you have to deal with a more modified style of tank controls, or for those warrior games enthusiasts out there, if you think about like when you're playing a Warriors game, how you have the ability and access to the camera, how you can use that with maneuvering to be able to pull off some things that you normally think wouldn't be possible, on top of animation cancel and other stuff like that. Although I do not know if this game has the ability to cancel animations on that one, in which case you would be like swinging your sword, then immediately using another input to cut off the animation and continue to do something else. Moving forward, using the Vulcans, firing on that one there. Auto lock on again. You can tell when it's locked on or not by seeing the health bar. And I will say, firing when it is not locked on can be a pain depending on how accurate or the way in which the weapons are treated. And so far they are doing an amazing job at this. While we're waiting, if you got anything or want to plug anything.
Yeah, I can remind folks that, of course, RTA in Japan is raising money for Doctors Without Borders. And if you would like to donate, you are able to do so by typing !donate in the chat. There are also some incentives for the run as well. If not for this run, but throughout the event, there are some incentives. You'll see some coming up for things like Vivistasis coming up later. You can learn more about all of those by typing !bid war, and that'll take you to the tracker page with the info. It's all going to be in Japanese, but you can translate it and you can see what incentives are coming up for future runs if you're curious about all of that.
You can see the runner there not going forward because the game will not let them, but what you will see is setting up so that way they can have the perfect lineup. And you'll tend to see that a lot more whenever you have to wait for something. You'll see basically aligning yourself up perfectly so you can get the perfect lineup to immediately be able to fire your next actual shots so that the damage will be as high as possible, or so that you can get to your objective faster. Gotta use that downtime to take advantage of things when you can.
そう考えると本作で多分最後まで見届けることはできたんでしょうね、多分。
Good old RX-79. Also, shout outs to Bandai for essentially being one of the huge proponents of the whole Gundam franchise. Technically Sunrise before Bandai bought them, if I recall correctly. Which, fun fact, the old logo for that one was a Haro, or the little green floating droid that had side things that acted like ears. And moving forward, taking full advantage of the boost as fast as they can, and as soon as they can do that one. As ideally, you want to be boosting as much as possible. Again, for those fans of racing games out there, you want to basically keep your boost as much as possible, let it go just before you can't do it anymore, and then pick it up again as soon as you can do that again. Getting unlucky with having the enemies trip them up, which is something you do need to be aware of, because if you fall down, it can be not only a pain to reset up your targeting, but it can also cause you to have to reset where you are facing, as well as enemy locations. Good there, backing up while continuing to fire, which is a skill you would think that more people would be aware of, but it's actually something that's not thought about as much. As if an enemy's coming towards you, sometimes it's better to go forward and deal damage, and sometimes it's just better to retreat while firing, especially if you need to go backwards anyway towards another objective. Or if you get really lucky, especially if having to take out a large group of enemies, and the game doesn't break apart enemies until they get to you, learning to actually fly and learning to actually maneuver backwards while firing becomes a huge advantage to the player, because that means that the enemies will not break apart, which dramatically allows for speedruns to take advantage of that quirk. Here you see them headed upwards, jumping on these platforms, and moving close enough so that they can skip a platform or two when possible. Getting a nice double jump there. See them jumping and then delaying the actual full use of it so that they can actually get a second boost in midair.
はい、ムービーが入ってミッション24クリアです。
And now we're at the Big Zan from the original. That first mobile armor that has to be defeated. Mobile armor being not just a mobile suit, but a giant arse mobile suit that, unlike looking like a human, is sort of like a large hybrid between ship and mobile suit as far as mobility goes. If those wondering why they had some of the mobile suits being in more of a humanoid shape, especially considering how it can be a little awkward in space to do maneuvers. It's because originally they were designed to help with building stuff in space colonies and more of an internal thing, so it makes it a lot more easy to maneuver on the ground. However, in space, it is a little awkward, but if you think about it like you being in submerged in water, it can be a bit easier, especially when you can maneuver yourself around and not have to worry about breathing as much or actually keeping orientation. Shout out to those people that actually do understand that kind of stuff, especially astronaut-wise and other stuff. You tend to learn a lot of things on that one. The skill set alone is just amazing to actually learn. It's an easy skill to pick up, like I said, but mastering it is something that does take a little bit. Although, positive note, when you see someone that actually can know what they're doing, which our runner here, I will be honest, one runner this style to another is doing a fantastic job. A fantastic job on that one. Especially knowing where to go, lining stuff up perfectly, keeping the actual target lock while avoiding things, keeping at a distance. It's no joke that these games just go unappreciated, and these styles of runs go unappreciated. Avoiding things, getting it closed, making sure to use the Vulcan on that one. Trying to fire at the same point of getting in as much damage as possible. You'll see sometimes not using all the Vulcans and sometimes using it as the amount of time needed to separate between things, as you want to avoid using up all your ammo sometimes, or use it just enough so that you can avoid having to wait enough for a reload. Since ironically, the fact of being able to multi-swap between weapons is very useful. The game gives you the ability to have multiple inputs for weapon at the same time, or multiple weapons on different buttons. It dramatically does speed up things, provided you can actually press them near, if not simultaneously, close enough so that way the game will let you keep up a rate of fire. Again, turning around, keeping an eye to that one, boosting around, firing off non-lock-on at present. And by non-lock-on, I mean non-auto-targeting lock-on. If you notice when the aiming reticle turns red, they know that they are immediately locked on, so they can immediately fire without having to auto-lock-on to try and follow the enemies around. And now getting locked on to that one, using the Vulcan. Pushing forward a bit. Using auto lock on here to be able to follow along with the enemy while keeping them on screen without having to try to manually lock on. For those Ace Combat fans out there, you know how that can be sometimes. Avoiding things, avoiding the attacks, trying to keep it on screen. Not trying to go in close because sometimes it can be a bit of a pain to maintain that lock on when being close. And it can also be a pain to avoid things, especially with how the enemy is moving and trying to avoid things. Having to actually dodge more than choosing to be able to attack because of the way the enemy is moving. See Armoro and Char's girlfriend there, which is a bit complicated on that one, but even still. Getting close to the area limits, that means basically, usually in this instance, it is a more spherical battlefield, so it all depends on where the limit to things are. Sometimes it is restrictive, and sometimes they'll let you go everywhere.
ロスが結構発生しやすいところということですね。素直に言うと、シャーザック。
You see him moving around, I lock on.
はい、キラキラ
Enjoying the graphics, there's Char again.
中からやつの影、シャー
So the amazing battle between those two. So it looks like we're not going to Char's counterattack, so essentially it's just going to be 1 versus 1.
あ、嫌な位置いった。
Beam rifle versus the sword, aiming to not only avoid but also deal damage.
2回目はですね、同じように
It's the type of thing where you have to try to aim
ビームサーベルでとど
while
めしないようにしましょう。
moving the camera to maintain lock
ここ
on.
ビームサーベルで撃破するとメモリアルミッシ
It
ョン
can be a
メモリア
lot
ルミッション
harder
が発生
to
して
line up the shots
でとにかくこのメモリアル
to
ミッション
not
を
only
達成
deal
しないと
damage,
すごい
but
時
as
間
you
が
can
かかるん
see,
ですね。
hit
ど
them
れ
at
ぐら
a
いかというと
distance.
達成すると52秒かかって、未達成の場合26秒で終わります。
Up, aiming, lining up on that one there.
でこれはですね、このムービーですね、
You see them both getting
原作だとビームライフ
separated,
ル
some
エレメンツが
cinematics
一応破壊
there.
されてるんですね。なので本作オリジナルの演出になってます。
Start avoiding that one, but for the ship, story-wise, is this where she is actually accidentally killed?
はい、エルメスがを撃破
Up
し
on
て
that
ミッ
one
ション
there.
26終わりです。
Trying to remember story-wise where we are.
13なのか
Getting that one. Again, both Char and Armoro being new types,
宇宙要塞アバーク
more of a
ワ
psychological,
ワワクの
not psychological, more of a
はい、このミッション前半後半分かれてて、前半は
psychic type connection between each other,
隊との戦闘になります。
which plot-wise does play into something with how the emotions affect piloting.
キャラクターで
Them saving a shot or two by being able to use the Vulcan
パイロットになってます。
up very closely to finish them off as soon as they are within range.
でですね、
Which really does help, even though it may not look like it. The fact that you're saving a shot means that you can use that for another enemy while also finishing things off without having to wait for a reload or switching
本作
weapons.
だと、S フィールドと N フィールドが合わさってるのか、合わせてる影響下で、ジョニー・ライデンと戦うことになります。
Around doing that there, making sure to line up the shots.
ここのとにかく厄介なのが、このゲルググキャノンもとにかく厄介です。
The one nice thing about auto lock on is it does help your shots be a bit more accurate at the cost of being a bit harder to aim to get those perfect shots. When you see someone actually be able to maintain those lock ons without having to have it slowly not be as accurate, then you know that they have the ability to do. I'm explaining that horribly. Sorry, y'all. Lining up. If the enemy's coming straight at you, that's when you just wail out at them.
これでキマイラ隊を
Just wailing away at them.
でここですね、難易度ハードになるとまた変わりまして、ノーマルだ
So
と、
following up, lining up,
高機動型叩く R1 から R2 に変化します。
looking for the next
で
enemy.
ハードになるとどうなるかっていうと、
Keeping an eye to that one.
R1 型
If
が
you notice the radar over there, which I haven't really talked about, does tell you where the next enemy is going to be.
作品でできたアクトザクに変わりま
And
す。
circling around, keeping them in
で
sight.
またこの後
Again, this is where being aware of your orientation
ハードになると
can
高機動
matter.
型になりますね。
especially when it sometimes does not include what altitude level they are at. It may show it on the radar, but it does not show if or not it's above you or below you sometimes. So that is one thing you have to be aware of and keep an eye to.
でですね、あと
When you're lucky, it will actually have a 3D style radar, and sometimes games do have it, sometimes they don't.
ちゃんと
Doing an amazing job so far.
会話も変わって足がついている。
Getting
パーフェク
close
ト
enough
っていう
on
会話
that
が変わ
one.
ります。
Lining up their shots. And again, if you don't need to lock onto something because the target is very big, it is worth not doing it sometimes so you can actually aim a bit better with the camera versus the game actually trying to not be as accurate if it's not perfectly lined up.
さっきのドムを撃破して、
Because large target means large hitbox. And you can see trying to boost that way to line up. And to get that one there, looks like Bright is calling.
ハードだとここがゲルグ
See them sliding that way when firing, so that way they can maintain a good lock on,
ゲルグに変わります。
so that the fire will, so that the shots will hit. It's sometimes also harder to lock on, unlock on, and then lock on again if you're trying to do something for a multiple hits with actually not a multiple hit with allowing the attacks to hit. Also, you see one of the other newer Gundams, well, not Gundams, because that's only for the Federation. One of the other mobile suits on that one, I believe piloted by Char, at least during the 1-year war.
はい、最終ミッション脱出。アーバー枠に取り付いてシャードの最終決戦です。でまずはですね、ザク2 F 型、なぜか F 型がここにいます。とリックドーム、ゲルブ。
Those in chat, I do highly recommend checking out these styles of games. They are a treat to not only play, but also speedrun, since it's very rewarding to be able to actually not only control a character very well, but learning-wise, it just teaches you so much about how important camera control and those fine, subtle movements can be to not only play fast, but how you can take advantage of stuff. It's more free-flowing movement than than it appears, but at the same point, again, I almost wish they had a hand cam just so our runner here could show just like how much they're actually moving their hands on the controller and yet not moving their hands on the controller. It's one of those things where you can substitute speed for precision. If you're very precise, you can actually do a lot more. However, if you're not as, if you're faster than being precise, you can compensate for it by just being able to reset any mistakes faster, movement speed-wise, versus precision, which is an actual trade-off, but it's also one of those things that makes these games very, very, very interesting. さあ2回目。その戦い方も同じですね。ジオングと戦うときに気をつけたい。I'll honestly say, apart from these types of games, there are a lot more. For fans of these types of games out there, you know who you are. It is I won't say a lost art, but just something you do not see as much in marathons nowadays, or people that consistently do speedrun them as much. But when you do see them being showcased, they are very, very interesting. And for example, here, getting to see stuff with Gundam. The way I actually practice this stuff up is via one of the other mech games for the system in Super Nintendo Fortress Macross, in which you also have to factor in the transforming mecha genre between plain, hybrid, and the, of course, mobile suit. Macross being one of the other famous mech franchises from around the time, and known for actually helping to not so much pioneer, but helping to popularize the transforming mech idea, which later on in Z Gundam and Gundam Wing, alongside Robotech, but I'm not going to get into that one. But even so, you start to see just how much Gundam is influenced and how much other close mech franchises have affected things. Lining up, and it sounds like time is going to come up. Firing there. So getting close on that one. During the cutscene.
はい、ここ安定したらタイマーストップです。はい、タイマーストップです。
And that's time. GG's to our runner and an amazing job. I want to check.
Fantastic run.
And I want to check something real quick.
Oh, are we thinking this might be a world record?
If it isn't, then it is by a few seconds.
Oh yeah, let us check that quickly.
So, at least according to SRC, so give me a second here.
感想した感想なんですけど、せっかくなんでいいシーンなんでちょっと黙ってます。
Let me find here, Xeon. Let me find it. Have it navigated via. Here it is. 1-year war. Yes.
That's a new world record.
By 3 seconds, according to SRC.
A world
Former-
record by 3 seconds.
1 hour, 21 minutes, 32 seconds, according to SRC.
That is incredible. That is very good. Potential world record,
And-
maybe.
I do not know if they realize it or not, because I do not see a pop-off. If anybody is in the official chat, do you want to see if the chat has realized there?
Either way, that was an impressive run, whether that is actually world record or not. That was incredible, and you did a fantastic job commentating, Magius.
Hey, Sal, you've seen me actually perform these styles of runs, and in all honesty, from one runner to another on that type of stuff, I applaud them just for, willingness to showcase these style of games, because it's not that it's a dying breed, but it's more that more people need to check out these styles of games because they help teach you so much. And they're just so fun to run.
Yeah, for sure. I think we saw some really interesting movement and mechanics in this game. So thank you for being here as commentator. Do you have any shout outs, anything you'd like to say to folks?
I'd like to shout out y'all for actually having me. I'd also like to shout out the anime speedrun community, as that's where you can find the Gundam community on that one. Check out SRC and you'll probably find it on that one. Shout outs to all the anime speedrunners out there. They are all great people, and we all love, the games we play. And it's more about just caring about it so much. I guess if y'all want to follow the runner, I'm pretty sure they have links in the chat if you feel like following me. Pretty sure they have something there as well. But I do need to stream more on that one. And when I saw this, I might actually be picking up the game myself to see about if or not there's anything I might be able to optimize to it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Shout out to everything.
Yeah, thank you, Magus.
Having me.
All right, folks. The runner's gonna, I guess, wrap up some final words here as the final cutscene is playing. We will be back with more English commentary for our next game in just a moment, so don't go away.
RTA の方を終わらせていただく前に、最後に、ガンダムの最後のナレーション文読み上げさせて終わりにさせていただきます。この日、宇宙世紀0080、この戦いの後、地球連邦軍政府とジオン共和国の間に終戦協定が結ばれた。以上、ありがとうございました。